We exist in two moments, two spaces, simultaneously. One is a world scorched by the desert sun, on the ruins of ancient Nippur, the hallowed city of the god Enlil. The other is here, in the sterile, refrigerated hum of a supercomputer hall in Munich. Geography has dissolved. Borders have been erased. Only two things remain: time and data. Before us lies the largest, most complex, and most tragically undervalued archive in the history of humankind. This is not Egyptian papyrus, which crumbles to dust at a touch. It is not medieval parchment, which surrenders to the flames of inquisitions or the damp rot of cellars. This is clay, fired, eternal clay, the most durable information medium ever conceived by human hands. Hundreds of thousands of tablets, covered in a constellation system of writing, invented 5,000 years ago between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is the beginning of history. This is the moment humanity gained a memory. For decades, historians, linguists, and archaeologists have existed in a state of quiet, hopeless, professional despair. More than 500,000 tablets have been unearthed. The vaults of museums in London, Berlin, Baghdad, Paris, and Philadelphia are filled to capacity with them. Crates are stacked from floor to ceiling in forgotten basements, yet we have managed to read only a fraction, a tragically small portion, less than 10%. The process of deciphering a single fragment can take months, sometimes years of painstaking labor. It demands an intimate knowledge of Sumerian, of Akkadian, of obscure dialects and lost cultural contexts. The experts possessing such knowledge can be counted on one hand. A single human lifetime is simply not enough to assemble this colossal mosaic, shattered into 1,000,000 fragments and scattered in the dust. Most of these clay hard drives of antiquity lie in boxes, labeled simply unreadable fragments, debris, the architectural rubble of history. But now, as this story is told, the rules of the game have changed. Forever. A revolution has occurred, unnoticed in the noise of current events. A new player has entered the field, a player that requires no sleep, whose eyes never tire. An intelligence that asks for no salary, suffers no ambition, and remembers every single symbol it has ever seen in a fraction of a second. Artificial intelligence. Latest generation neural networks, trained on thousands of already translated texts, were unleashed into the digital archives of these silent clay libraries. A project that began as a routine, even tedious digitization of museum holdings has transformed into an intellectual thriller of global consequence. The algorithm began to do what the human mind could not. It began to connect the pieces that generations of scholars had deemed incompatible. From the dust of forgotten empires, a conversation is being rekindled, a dialogue across 5 millennia. We are not merely reading the past. We are allowing the very dawn of human consciousness to speak once more. An unseen thread began to form, stretching across more than a century of discovery and thousands of miles of geography. It connected a shard of baked clay found in the sands of Mesopotamia in 1850 and resting quietly in a London museum, with a fragment unearthed in 1980, its silent twin held in Baghdad. For decades, they were just two pieces among tens of thousands, inert and meaningless. Then, a new kind of intelligence was tasked to look. And it delivered a result. A text. It was coherent, terrifying, and detailed with a chilling, modern resonance. This was no familiar myth of creation. with gods sculpting humanity from river mud. Nor was it another dry ledger, a list of grain purchases for a temple or a tally of sheep for the flock. What the artificial intelligence dragged from 4 millennia of clay-bound darkness was a warning. A meticulously detailed, almost journalistic report on the death of a civilization, one that had believed itself eternal, wealthy, and invincible. The scholars who guided the machine had hoped for lost poetry, for hymns to love and war. Instead, they were handed the post-mortem of a dead world, and the diagnosis delivered by the Sumerians themselves 4,000 years. To grasp the scale of our former ignorance, one must first comprehend the tragedy. Picture the entirety of the British Library, or the Library of Congress, obliterated by a colossal charge of dynamite. Imagine every book torn into individual pages, every page shredded into fragments the size of a fingernail. Now imagine those fragments mixed with crushed stone, with shattered brick, with the refuse of daily life and endless tons of sand. Scatter this impossible debris across a desert spanning thousands of square kilometers. Then, let it lie buried beneath the earth, enduring the passage of 4,000 years of wind and rain. This is the reality of modern Assyriology. Cuneiform itself is a decipherer's nightmare. It is not an alphabet of some 30 letters. It is an impossibly complex logosyllabic system where the same wedge-shaped mark can signify a sound, an entire word, or a category of concepts, a determinative, all depending on its context. A single star-shaped sign might be read as the word for God, the word for sky, or simply the syllable an. The layers of meaning are a labyrinth for the human mind. And the human brain, even the most brilliant, has its limits, a finite operational memory. A scholar might hold the contents of 500 tablets in their mind. A genius with a photographic memory might retain 1,000. But no human can hold the precise visual image of 50,000 broken pieces stored in different museums on opposite sides of the planet and instantaneously compare the unique geometry of their fractures. It is for this reason that we were effectively blind. For centuries, we saw the individual trees, but never the forest fire consuming them. We read the scattered complaints of a priest bemoaning a poor harvest in a single city, but we failed to see the systemic collapse of an entire ecosystem. We chronicled local wars, but could not perceive the deep, underlying economic decay that fueled them. Until the year 2023, we were merely wandering in the darkness with a single flashlight, illuminating one tiny piece of the mosaic at a time, while the vast, terrifying picture remained shrouded. Then, a new kind of mind entered the field. The Electronic Babylonian Library Project. Here, deep machine learning algorithms, developed by a unique collaboration of linguists and programmers at the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, were given a simple yet monumental task. They set out to teach a computer to see the intricate patterns of cuneiform, just as it sees faces in an airport crowd, or the numbers on a license plate speeding down a highway. The machine was not merely connecting fragments of clay. It was bridging the abyss of time itself. It gave a voice to the long dead, allowing their final, desperate message to be heard, and saw itself as the center of the world could so completely misread the signs of its own demise. What omens are we in our own eternal and invincible age failing to see right now? To recognize the patterns in the chaos, to rebuild what has been ruined, to predict what has been lost. For millennia, this has been the sacred charge of the historian, the archaeologist, the scholar. But now, a new kind of mind has been brought to bear on the shattered remnants of the ancient world, and it has accomplished what no single human, nor any consortium of scientists ever could. It began with millions of digital scans, the ghosts of fractured clay tablets. Before this new intelligence, they were an impossible puzzle. But then, it began its work. In the silent, non-physical realm of computation, it started to virtually piece them together in three-dimensional space, fitting edge to fractured edge, resurrecting their original forms. And as these fragments reunited, scattered phrases, once isolated and cryptic, merged into a single, monolithic text. A genre of writing long dismissed as mere lamentation, as penitent hymns to the heavens, suddenly found a new, terrifying voice. This was not a prayer to angry gods. It was a chronicle of a man-made apocalypse, recorded by those who lived through it. The process is not magic. It is the cold, elegant precision of higher mathematics, of three-dimensional geometry and brutal statistics. A cuneiform sign is not flat ink on paper. It is a physical event, a three-dimensional impression carved by a reed stylus into soft clay. It possesses depth, an angle of incision, a geometry of shadow. Every scribe had a unique hand, a distinct pressure, a signature in the mud. The old black and white photographs, the careful line drawings of 20th century archaeologists, they captured the shape but lost the soul. They could not convey this volume, these nuances. But new laser scanning technologies created digital clones of these tablets, perfect down to the last micron. A neural network, developed for this singular purpose, began to analyze the geometry of every single wedge. It learned to understand the handwriting of a specific scribe. It could discern the difference between a character hastily impressed under the dictation of an administrator and one deliberately carved for eternity in a royal edict. But its greatest power lay in predictive analytics. In much the same way a smartphone anticipates the next word in a message, this intelligence learned to predict what should have been written on a broken shard or in an eroded line. It drew upon the statistics of millions of other texts. And so, when this algorithm was unleashed upon the vast archive of texts from a critical period, the fall of the Third Dynasty of Ur, around the year 2004 before the Common Era, it began to output translations that sent a cold sweat down the spines of researchers. For generations, we had read these lines as religious metaphor. The land became white as gypsum. The fields turned bitter. The river turned its face away. The grain burned in the ear. We believed them to be poetic allegories, vivid imagery describing the additive records from the exact same period. Tax ledgers, ration lists, private letters. The algorithm revealed the context. These were not metaphors. They were dry, panicked, technical reports. The methodical documentation of an ecological catastrophe on a scale that shattered a civilization. The voices, trapped in clay for 4 millennia, were not singing hymns of repentance. They were leaving a warning. In the silent hum of a thinking machine, scattered fragments of a long-dead civilization began to coalesce. An artificial intelligence, tasked with weaving together disparate cuneiform records, uncovered the true narrative of a systemic collapse, the slow, agonizing death of Sumer. This was the first great civilization on Earth, the cradle of mathematics, astronomy, and the written word. And the reason for its fall was not war, not a sudden barbarian invasion, nor the mythical wrath of the gods. The culprit was technology. The Sumerians, in their brilliance, had engineered their own extinction. They were the architects of a progress that would ultimately consume them. The texts, once isolated accounts of harvests, decrees, and laments, now formed a single, terrifying chronicle. They described a process we now call secondary soil salinization. To tame the arid Mesopotamian plain, the Sumerians had forged an irrigation system of breathtaking ambition. It was an engineering miracle. They bent the will of the great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, diverting their life-giving water into the dead desert. They carved thousands of kilometers of canals, a vast circulatory system that forced the wasteland to bloom. The rewards were beyond imagination. They reaped harvests that defy modern comprehension, yields of 70-fold, even 100-fold. A single planted seed would return 100 grains. This economic explosion fueled the rise of humanity's first true megacities, Uruk, Ur, Nippur. But in their triumph, they had disturbed a fragile, ancient balance. Their vast network of canals caused the subterranean water table to rise. Reconstructed texts reveal the growing panic among their ancient agronomists, a respected profession known as the Engars. Their frantic reports to the capital paint a grim picture. Water, they wrote, stands on the fields for too long. The roots are rotting in the soil. In the searing climate of southern Iraq, where summer temperatures climbed to 50 degrees Celsius, the standing water evaporated with ferocious speed. But as the water vanished into the air, it left behind the dissolved salts it had carried from the deep earth. Year after year, century by century, this fine white poison accumulated in the fertile topsoil. The artificial intelligence charted the dynamics of this slow death by analyzing the mention of agricultural crops in translated tablets over a span of 1,000 years. The resulting graph is not a line, but a eulogy. In the earliest texts, from 3,000 years before the Common Era, wheat is the dominant crop, a capricious but valuable and nutritious staple. But as the centuries pass and the salt tightens its grip, wheat begins to vanish from the records and the rations. It is replaced by barley, a hardier grain, more resistant to the saline soil, but less nourishing, less palatable. It was a concession, a compromise with a dying land. Yet another few centuries pass, and the barley yields also begin to fail. The harvests fall catastrophically. The language of the tablets shifts from abundance to desperation. They speak of famine, of grain prices soaring into the heavens, an inflation of 3,000% in just a few years. They record the unthinkable. Men and women selling their own children into slavery for a single sack of flour, a final, desperate act to save them from starvation. This was no swift apocalypse unfolding over generations, a malady passed from father to son. And the analysis shows, with chilling clarity, that the Sumerians understood precisely what was happening. They were not fools. The recovered texts contain explicit warnings. They contain the decrees of kings ordering the fields to be washed with fresh water. They reveal frantic attempts to alter their technology. But it was too late. The system they had built was too vast, the environmental damage too profound, the momentum of their society too great to reverse. Their great irrigation network, once a symbol of their mastery over nature, had become the very instrument of their demise. They had built a perfect machine for their own destruction, a legacy that serves as a timeless echo, a cautionary tale written in salt and dust, reminding us that the same ingenuity that elevates a civilization can, if unchecked, also engineer its silent, lingering end. The engine of civilization had reached a terrifying velocity. Its population, a tide of humanity, had swelled beyond any point of return. They had become hostages to their own system, a complex machine that demanded ever more fuel. To feed the cities, to survive the day, they were forced to sacrifice their tomorrow, flooding the fields with yet more water, again and again. But the salt, a white ghost rising from the overworked soil, was only half the affliction. Misfortune rarely travels alone. Deep within the archives of humanity, a connection was waiting to be made. A link between mundane administrative reports and the celestial diaries of the Sumerians. For they were obsessive observers of the heavens, charting every wandering star, every planetary conjunction, reading the future in the sky. When these records were cross-referenced with ancient texts of omens, a pattern emerged, one that the human eye had long dismissed as myth, as the hyperbole of a forgotten people. Drought. The cuneiform tablets speak of it in chilling detail. They describe dust storms that swallowed the sun for weeks on end, a relentless wind carrying a fine red sand that ground between the teeth, choked the wells, and invaded every home, a constant gritty reminder of the world's decay. The stars, once their guides and gods, vanished behind a permanent veil of dust. For millennia, these were just stories. But when modern paleoclimatologists compared these newly translated accounts with the hard data of our planet's history, the stories took on a terrifying reality. Analysis of stalactites grown deep in the region's caves and of sediment cores drilled from the floor of the Persian Gulf told the exact same tale. The data aligned with breathtaking precision down to the very decade. Approximately 4,200 years ago, around the year 2200 BCE, a cataclysm began. The Near East was gripped by a mega-drought, an event now known to science as the 4.2 kiloyear event. It was a global, abrupt, and catastrophic shift in climate. The very winds of the world changed their course. The life-giving rains that fell in the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates, high in the mountains of Anatolia, simply ceased. The level of the great rivers plummeted. Using artificial intelligence, the famous literary text, The Lament for Sumer and Akkad, was re-examined. It was revealed to be not a poem, but something far more visceral. A field report from the heart of an apocalypse. The rivers, it states, dried up and became dust. The canals, marvels of ancient engineering, were choked with silt and sand. The fish fled to the deep, inaccessible waters. The reed boats, the arteries of commerce and travel, could no longer sail. These were not metaphors, they were facts. Without water from the rivers, the gigantic irrigation system, already poisoned by salt, became a useless skeleton of dry mud. The Sumerian civilization found itself at the epicenter of a perfect storm. From below, a toxic earth of their own making, a land that would no longer give birth. From above, a hostile and altered climate that no longer gave water. And trapped between these two unforgiving forces were overpopulated megacities, millions of people locked within stone walls, with nothing left to feed them. Yet the most harrowing account, reconstructed by the neural networks, was not of environmental collapse, but of human collapse. It is this description that chills modern sociologists and political scientists to the bone, for it sounds all too familiar. With horrifying clarity, the Sumerians described the evaporation of trust, the fundamental glue of any civilization. They chronicle how civilized people, who prided themselves on their intricate laws and social order, devolved into beasts. A brother, the tablets say, no longer trusted his brother. Judges accepted bribes and delivered false verdicts, acquitting the powerful and condemning the widow. Orphans and the dispossessed wandered the streets, and no one would offer them a piece of bread. Merchants used false weights to cheat the desperate. A mother would bar the door to her own starving daughter. The sophisticated bureaucracy, a machine of stat surplus of resources, vanished. The authority of the king evaporated with it. The scattered administrative correspondence, pieced together, tells a story of chaos, of a world where order had lost all meaning. Theirs was not a civilization conquered by foreign armies. It was a civilization that died of thirst in a land it had poisoned, under a sky that had abandoned it. The clay tablets they left behind are more than a record of a fallen empire. They are a mirror, reflecting the profound fragility of the systems we build and the trust we place in one another. A timeless warning of what happens when the delicate balance is broken. In the dying light of the third millennium before the Common Era, the great empire of Ur was breathing its last. Under its final king, Ibbi-Sin, the world's first bureaucratic state began to hemorrhage authority, its collapse chronicled in the stark, indelible script of cuneiform on clay. What survives is not a history written in hindsight, but a chronicle of panic, a societal disintegration captured in real time. Across the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, the provincial governors, the ensies, began their silent rebellion. One by one, the lifeblood of the empire, the steady flow of grain and taxes to the capital, was severed. They ceased to send their tributes. They sealed the great gates of their cities, transforming provincial capitals into fortified city-states, declaring a desperate de facto independence. Their letters to the throne, etched into tablets that would outlive their civilization, oscillate between frantic appeals and outright defiance. There is no grain for the offerings in the temples, one writes, a plea wrapped in a threat. Another reports, the barbarians from the sea have crossed the wall. We cannot hold them back. A military commander confesses the ultimate failure. The soldiers are deserting. They have not been paid in 3 months. The center could no longer hold. The periphery, once a source of strength, was now a collection of hostile enclaves, each hoarding what little remained, squabbling over the scraps of a dying world. The state was atomizing, reverting to a primal struggle for food and survival. Within these texts of despair, a single, haunting phrase echoes with chilling frequency. The gods have abandoned their dwellings. For generations, scholars interpreted this through a literal lens, a description of ritual or the physical statues by victorious enemies. It was seen as an act of war, a religious lament. But a more nuanced analysis, a deeper reading of the context, reveals a far more devastating truth. This was not a report of a physical event, but a potent political metaphor for the evaporation of legitimacy. The gods abandoning their temples was the Sumerian way of saying the mandate of heaven had been lost. The people no longer believed. They no longer believed the elite could protect them from invaders, that the king could intercede with the heavens to bring the rains, or that the vast, creaking bureaucracy could feed them. And once that collective faith in the state vanished, the physical structures became meaningless. The mighty walls of palaces and temples crumbled, not from the force of a battering ram, but because there was no one left with the will to defend them. This crisis of faith found its ultimate expression in a monumental act of denial. Decades earlier, as the great drought that would doom the empire began to bite, King Shu-Sin had commissioned a mega-project of breathtaking ambition, a great wall to keep out the Amorites. This was a colossal fortification, an engineered barrier against a tide of nomadic migrants fleeing the very same climate catastrophe from the north. The official records of its construction are filled with imperial bravado and bureaucratic pride. They list with meticulous detail the engineering plans, the tens of thousands of laborers, the mountains of fired brick, the rivers of bitumen and bundles of reeds consumed by the project. It was an undertaking on the scale of the Great Wall of China, a line of defiance drawn across the desert for nearly 200 kilometers. The Sumerians, the inventors of the city and the written word, placed their faith in their own technological prowess. They believed that if they could only build a wall high enough, thick enough, and long enough, the hungry world outside would simply disappear. They believed engineering could restore the world to its former state of irrigated abundance. But recent analysis, cross-referencing the dates of the wall's construction with the records of cities falling within its supposedly protected perimeter, has unearthed the project's true, tragic meaning. The wall did not work. It was a catastrophic failure. Far from saving the empire, it only hastened its demise. It acted as a massive drain, siphoning the last resources from a dying economy. It pulled workers from the fields, exacerbating the very famine it was meant to solve. The desperate Amorites, driven not by armies, but by the elemental force of hunger, were not stopped. They simply walked around the wall's northern edge through the mountains, or they passed directly through it, bribing the starving guards with the one thing the state could no longer provide: a sack of grain. In the end, the wall may have simply been abandoned, left unfinished as the treasury ran dry. The lesson, pulled from the ancient clay, is as profound as it is timeless. A technical solution, a wall, cannot fix a systemic ecological and social collapse. It cannot hold back a changing climate or appease a starving populace. The Great Wall of Shu Sin became a monument not to imperial power, but to the spectacular vanity of an elite that sought to brick itself off from the encroaching reality of its own extinction. It stands as a silent testament to the fact that when a civilization loses its ability to adapt, when its people lose faith in its purpose, the highest walls in the world serve only to enclose a tomb. In the silent archives of a lost world, a new form of intelligence has been listening. A neural network, sifting through the digital ghosts of cuneiform tablets, detected a sudden, chilling spike. A frantic surge in the mention of a specific constellation of symptoms, all clustering in the final, desperate years of the Sumerian cities. The texts speak of a cough that leaves the face blackened, as if stained by shadow. They describe a fever that brew a home without a door, an invisible predator that slaughters every soul from the master to the lowest servant. To understand this plague, we must first see the world that birthed it. The great cities, once centers of innovation and power, had become fortresses of fear. Unprecedented numbers of people, fleeing nomadic incursions and the ravages of a changing climate, had swarmed behind their massive walls. This monstrous overcrowding was a tinderbox awaiting a spark. The population was already weakened, their immune systems compromised by decades of famine and malnutrition. The lifeblood of their civilization, the intricate network of canals, had failed. Once flowing channels of clean water choked, transforming into stagnant, putrid bogs, teeming with unseen bacteria. It was the perfect crucible for a pandemic. From the dispassionate distance of modern medicine, we cannot be certain of the pathogen's name. Was it have no name? The diagnosis is lost to time, but the outcome is recorded with terrifying clarity. The tablets tell of mountains of corpses piling up in the streets, with no one left strong enough or brave enough to perform the sacred burial rites. In their final desperation, the living threw the dead into the Euphrates River, poisoning the very source of their water and creating a terrifying feedback loop of death. This was the blow that shattered a civilization. The cities were not emptied by famine or war alone, but by a biological enemy they could neither see nor comprehend. The Sumerians, in their terror, gave it a divine name: the Hand of Nergal, the god of plague, death, and the underworld. We, looking back through the cold lens of science, call it a sanitary catastrophe brought on by a total collapse of infrastructure and ecology. Yet, among the thousands of shattered clay fragments, something more profound than royal decrees or temple inventories has survived. The most haunting, human documents are the private letters, the desperate whispers of ordinary people caught in the maelstrom. These were not composed by professional scribes in the service of kings, but by individuals trying to survive one more day. One message, etched in clay 4,000 years ago, reads, "To my father, I am dying of hunger here in the city. The dogs in the street eat better than I do. There is no grain. Send me silver, or send me grain. If you do not, I will be forced to sell myself and my wife into slavery just to live." Another voice cries out into the silence, a letter to a loved one. "To my lord, my house is empty. My neighbors have all fled to the north. I am afraid of the night. Marauders walk the streets now. They have killed the city guard. Why do you not write to me? Are you still alive? The water in the wells has turned bitter." These are the unfiltered voices of people watching their world dissolve into dust before their very eyes. They did not understand the global causes, the shifting climate, the soil salinization, the geopolitics that had doomed them. They only knew the intimate, visceral horror of a life, built and ordered over centuries, crumbling into chaos. They only knew the gnawing emptiness in their stomachs, the fear of the darkness, and the silence where a neighbor's voice used to be. The social contract, the invisible thread that holds a society together, was torn to shreds. The tablets also record the rise of marauding. Citizens, driven to the brink of madness by desperation, began to loot the temples and palaces long before any enemy reached the gates. Shrines lose their sanctity when children are crying from hunger. People stormed the state granaries, murdering the officials who stood in their way. It was a civilization consuming itself from within. This ancient apocalypse has caused a profound resonance in the modern world, far beyond the quiet halls of Ar. Climatologists and economists now pore over the translations of Assyriologists, searching for patterns. Because this is not merely history, it is a forecast. It is a working model of systemic collapse. An artificial intelligence, analyzing the Sumerian scenario, has isolated the 5 key markers that triggered their downfall. We now possess a 4,000-year-old blueprint for the end of a world. The question is not whether we can read the warning etched into those ancient tablets, but whether we will choose to heed it. It begins with a familiar pattern, a sequence of choices that echoes through the ruins of fallen worlds. First, the predatory and intensive exploitation of the environment, a feverish pursuit of short-term gain. It is the sound of rivers being diverted for one more record harvest, a relentless consumption that ignores the inevitable bill. Second, the willful blindness to the signals of distress. The earth itself sends warnings. For the Sumerians, it was the soil, slowly turning white, poisoned by the very water that gave it life. This salinization was visible, undeniable. Yet the warnings were dismissed, silenced in the halls of power to preserve the status quo, to protect the season's profits. Third, the arrival of an external shock. A sharp, unforgiving shift in the climate. A blow that a healthy system might have endured. But this blow falls upon a body already weakened by anthropogenic stress. The depletion of resources, the exhaustion of the land, leaves the entire civilization brittle, vulnerable, and poised to shatter. Fourth, the decay of the social fabric. As resources dwindle, inequality metastasizes. A chasm opens between the populace and the elites, and into this void falls all trust in the institutions of governance. The shared story that binds a people together begins to unravel. And fifth, the final, desperate response. The attempt to solve systemic, complex problems with the blunt instrument of force. It is the building of walls to keep out the desperate. It is the isolationism that mistakes closing a border for solving a crisis. It is the waging of wars over the last drops of water, the last patches of fertile land. This five-act tragedy is not a modern theory. It is an ancient algorithm, painstakingly reconstructed from the clay archives of Sumer. And when this ancient model of collapse was fed the data of our own 21st century, our soil degradation, our global deficit of fresh water, our accelerating climate change, our migration crises, our pandemics, the correlation was staggering. The match was over 85%. We are walking the same road. We are making the same mistakes, only now with smartphones in our hands and nuclear weapons sleeping in their silos. A dispassionate machine, an artificial intelligence, has deciphered the Sumerian warning, and its message is stark. Civilization is fragile. Its existence is not a guarantee. It can be unmade. It can vanish. An ecological debt is always called in, and the interest on that debt is the death of a culture. Scientists who witnessed the results were shaken by how precisely these ancient people, without knowing it, had described our world. Their scribes etched into clay, the fields became white with salt. Today, we need only look at satellite images of the great agricultural zones of Asia, Australia, and the Americas to see the same ghostly pallor spreading across our land. They wrote, "The rivers ran dry." Today, we look upon the diminished Colorado, the struggling Euphrates, or the ship-gravias of what was once the Aral Sea. The Sumerian civilization did not end in a single fiery cataclysm. It faded. The people dissolved, assimilated among the newcomers, the Amorites and the Akkadians. Their language, the first ever written, died. It became a fossil, a dead tongue of science and ritual, understood only by to lifeless hills of clay, buried by the patient sand. But they left us their archive. In an act of profound, perhaps unconscious foresight, they recorded their own demise. One can almost picture the last scribes, sitting in the dust of dying cities, hoping that someone, somewhere in the distant future, would read their words and understand. On the end of many tablets, there is a standard formula, a curse upon any who would dare destroy the text. But on a few, a different, rarer postscript is found. Not a curse, but a plea. Whoever sees this tablet, may he pour oil and water for my soul. May he understand. The artificial intelligence has fulfilled their last request. It read the tablets. It restored their memory from the oblivion of millennia. But it did more. It transformed their private, national tragedy into a universal textbook on survival. For us. The question that now hangs in the air is whether we are capable of learning to ignore the signs until the salt bleeds through our own soil and the water is gone for good. We turn off the monitors, the screens go dark. But in quiet, climate-controlled rooms in Munich, the servers continue to hum. They are digesting new terabytes of data, processing the records of Babylon and Assyria, the next great empires to rise from the dust of Sumer, and the next to fall. The work continues. The pattern is still being traced. Across the silent millennia, a message has finally been deciphered. From the fractured clay of the Atrahasis epic, an ancient Mesopotamian poem of creation, flood, and humanity's near extinction, a single line has emerged. Once unreadable, lost to the ravages of time, it has been painstakingly restored with a certainty of 99.9%. It reads not as myth, but as a chillingly familiar diagnosis. The text serves as an epitaph for any unchecked growth. The people had become as numerous as locusts, the scribe etched into the wet clay. Their noise grew heavy, and it troubled the sleep of the gods. This was not divine annoyance, it was a planetary crisis. The earth grew weary of bearing them. Her breast dried up, and she no longer gave her milk. This is not mysticism. It is ecology, written 4,000 years ago. The Sumerians understood a fundamental truth. Every world has its breaking point. They crossed that line, and their civilization paid the price. We now stand on that very same precipice. The great secret of the Mesopotamian tablets has been revealed. It is not a map to treasure, no recipe for eternal life, nor a message from otherworldly visitors. It is the layout of a minefield, the very one upon which we now walk. The clay has spoken after 5,000 years of silence, and we no longer have the excuse of ignorance. The warning has been delivered. The question is whether a species that has forgotten its oldest lessons can ever truly learn from them.